So I figured that I should just finish the story, at least up to a certain point, and then wait and see the results to see if it's something worth continuing with. And the reality of the situation is, I wasn't sure what to go to next, but um, but the fact of the matter is, with the fact that we just talked about Halloween Havoc 1997, which has one of, if not my favorite match in this era, that being Eddie Guerrero versus Rey Mysterio for the Cruiserweight title, um, we move to World War III. World War III is a pay-per-view, in my opinion, that if you go back to 1996, World War III, which I believe was the first one. No, it was the second one. Excuse me. The Giant won the first World War III set for a future world title shot. Because World War III in 1995 was for the vacant World Heavyweight Championship, which Randy Savage won. And Randy was the guy early on in Nitro, within the realm of Nitro, and I believe World War III 1996 was when Jerry Saggs ended up getting injured and ended up having to retire due to a severe back injury, I want to say. Chris Jericho managed by Teddy Long. Seems like a short-lived partnership. But if we fast forward back to 1997, again, it's where Ernest Miller was progressively turning heel, and that makes sense with their match. I have no problem with Disco and Saturn. Yuji Nagata and Ultimo Dragon, in my opinion, didn't have the best chemistry from what I saw in the highlights and what I heard from the review of the match. I have no problem with Dave Taylor and Steven Regal going against the Steiners. Raven and Scotty Riggs was a feud because Scotty Riggs got blinded by Raven, or partially blinded by Raven. Mongo versus Alex Wright is the first match I have a problem with. Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero have no problem with. This is where Eddie was. The focus for Eddie was Eddie and Dean heading to Starrcade. Kurt Hennig and Ric Flair. Second match I have a problem with. And the third match was the World War III 60-man Battle Royal. I feel like as a standby match, Goldberg and Goldberg and Mongo. The original match was Goldberg and Mongo, but Goldberg was taken out, and Mongo ended up fighting Alex Wright in what was a quick squash match. In my opinion, the match was unnecessary. And could have just as easily been a different standby match, because it also made Alex Wright look like a punk because of him being forced into the match by Deborah. I'm not saying that Mongo didn't need to be positioned in a match. He could have been positioned in a match against somebody else. But the fact of the matter is, it made Alex Wright look like a loser, for lack of a better word, and the match was unnecessary, in my opinion. And I've went through multiple times in the previous videos how I feel about Kurt Hennig and Ric Flair feud. I will not go through it this time, but what I will say is I'm going to spend a majority of this video talking about World War III, and I will get back to that in a second. Let me just re-go through this show and explain what I would change, why I would change it, what the difference is, what the differences are, and you know, so on and so forth. I wouldn't change anything with the opening match except maybe giving the cruiserweights the match instead of the Faces of Fear and Glacier and Ernest Miller. Maybe I don't I don't think Eddie and Ray, because I think Eddie and Ray after Mongo's match was a good spot. Um maybe like Psychosis and Hoovy in the opening match to get some cruiserweights on the card, and outside of Eddie and Ray, or even maybe a tag team match with four cruiserweights to get four cruiserweights on, and then something like that, just to get the adrenaline pumping early, as opposed to a slow plotting brawl type match with the Faces of Fear and Glacier and Ernest Miller, which is a match that could have just happened the following night on Nitro. Saturn and Disco I have no problem with. It was a solid match, and I like Perry Saturn. I like the World Television Championship, yada yada, so on and so forth. I wouldn't change anything except maybe giving it a little bit more time. Yuji Nagata and Ultimo Dragon, I understand the match, I understand the concept, I understand a lot of the stuff, but I just think there was something missing, and that the match could have been saved a little bit if it went maybe like 9 minutes or 10 minutes instead of 12 minutes. Maybe bumping the match down a couple of minutes, giving that time to Saturn and Disco, have them go almost 10 minutes instead, and maybe give it to, honestly, maybe give some more time to Eddie and Ray, because they proved back at Halloween Havoc they could tear down the house. Even though, from what I remember, these two were not on chemistry-wise during this match, and it kind of showed. What I would have done, probably, is I probably would have scrapped um, I probably would have scrapped Mongo and Alex Wright, and I probably would have scrapped the Faces of Fear and Glacier and Ernest Miller. I would have let the cruiserweights have the opening match to get the adrenaline high in the opening match, and in the sixth match, I would have had Ric Flair against Buff Bagwell. I would have had Ric Flair against Buff Bagwell. Ric Flair beats Buff Bagwell. Then he gets an opportunity against Kurt Hennig at Starrcade to settle the score once and for all. I wouldn't change Raven and Scotty Riggs. I wouldn't have changed the tag team title defense for the Steiners, because it's a breath of fresh air, in my opinion, having the belts off the outsiders. Eddie and Ray, I wouldn't have changed. You know what? Knowing that I would have given Ric Flair and Buff Bagwell Mongo's spot, I probably would have given Ray and Eddie less time, and I would have given Yuji Nagata and Ultimo Dragon a little less time, and I would have turned it around and given it to Ric Flair and Buff Bagwell to allow them to get a little bit more time, and I probably would have also taken a minute off of Raven and Scotty Riggs. If Ric Flair's out of his match against Kurt Hennig, who fights Kurt Hennig? Chris Benoit. 100% Chris Benoit fights Kurt Hennig, and Benoit comes extremely close to winning the U.S. title from Kurt Hennig, but comes up just short. I would say by Vincent's hand. And that allows Vincent to get beaten up by Benoit at the end of the match, or maybe the next day on Nitro, because I just remembered Thunder's not a thing yet. But Kurt Hennig, by the skin of his teeth, keeps the U.S. title, at least for the time being. But we know that after tonight, it is Ric Flair versus Kurt Hennig at Starrcade, where Flair can finally get his revenge. Because, in my opinion, this should be the first pay-per-view that Ric Flair comes back for, missing Halloween Havoc and not being there, period. I don't know if I mentioned that in the Halloween Havoc review, or I guess you could call it a review. Yeah, I guess you could call it a review. But in my opinion, Ric Flair shouldn't go right into a match with Kurt Hennig. Kurt Hennig's a champion. Ric Flair does have a reason to go after Kurt Hennig, but Ric Flair should not just immediately go for a champion without building to the match. You know what I mean? I know that's not where the money is, but Ric Flair is where the money is, in my opinion. Especially at this time. And Ric Flair could have helped bring stability a little bit to a suffering place, and that suffering place was the upper mid-card. Because there was somebody about ready to break through into the main event that should have won World War III. And should have been given the opportunity for a world heavyweight title shot. And here's the thing. I would allow every single thing that took place for this match to happen except the ending. Except the ending. The fact of the matter is, the World War III concept is a unique concept, but World War III is a bit of a clusterfuck. Because a 60-man, 3-ring battle royal is inherently a clusterfuck. Because it's 60 guys, it's 3 rings, it's just made to be a clusterfuck. In my opinion, the Battle Bowl concept that was there early on in WCW that World War III replaced was a better concept. Within reason. I don't think that the Battle Bowl concept was better because it was something that shouldn't have taken place over the course of the pay-per-view. It should have been taking place over the course of the build-up to the pay-per-view, as opposed to on the actual night of the pay-per-view. You know what I mean? And it's like questionable, the decision making, and I know the questionable nature of, well, I know that there's I shouldn't say that. I don't know if there are people that like the World War III concept. I don't know if there's people that lean more towards what I agree with, that the World War III concept was not the worst idea that WCW had that was worldwide as far as pay-per-view concepts. As far as unique match types, it was not the worst idea. Unique match type, bad idea, triple tier cage. I think it should have just stayed in Ready to Rumble. But hard to follow? Yes. Hard to stay invested in? Yes. Does it change the fact that at this time the winner of this matchup could have been made a star and could have given a fresh name an opportunity at the main event? Yes. In my opinion, if you go back to Halloween Havoc 1997, I can tell you the biggest change that I made to Halloween Havoc 1997 was the steel cage match with Roddy Piper and Hulk Hogan should not have main evented, especially because Piper beat Hogan in a cage by technical submission. In my opinion, there is no cause to end a steel cage via technical submission. Well, actually there is, because there are some cage matches that can end in pinfall or submission. But main eventing a pay-per-view and having that be the finish, I don't know how I feel about it. But the hottest feud of 1997, and if we look up the Wrestling Observer Awards, and if we look back at what was the match of the year, or at least the feud of the year for 1997, then, here we go, Pro Wrestling Match of the Year. It was the feud of the year. Well, or maybe it wasn't with the Wrestling Observer, and it was. But, point is, Diamond Dallas Page versus Randy Savage was one of those feuds that were getting people talking. On par, in my opinion, you can roast me if you want, but it was on par, in my opinion, with Bret versus Austin. I mean, it was on par, in my opinion, with Sting and Hogan, as far as a conversation piece. Yes, 1997 WWE was taking control. Now I'm actually curious. To see if they actually won any awards for this match. But my point is, the biggest change I would have made to yeah, here it is. They won the feud of the year in 1997 from PWI, from Pro Wrestling Illustrated. I knew they won an award for the feud. I don't know if I agree that Austin and Bret Hart lost, but that's beside the point, and the conversation for another video. But the biggest change I made in that video was, I thought that the Las Vegas street fight, or the Las Vegas death match between Savage and Diamond Dallas Page should have main evented Halloween Havoc, and would have been a more satisfying end to not just the feud, but the pay-per-view, if Dallas Page won the feud with Randy Savage and won in the main event spot of one of the bigger pay-per-views of the year, because Halloween Havoc was one of WCW's biggest pay-per-views of the year. And also, in my opinion, if the plan all along was the Wolfpack in 1998, then giving a reason why there was tension within the NWO to cause a fracture within the New World Order, Savage losing to Dallas Page, and Dallas Page being seen as a threat to the stability and the domination of the NWO would have and should have been what the card was to play. I understand that maybe keeping Dallas down a little bit because of his relationship with Eric Bischoff and because of the politics going on in WCW at the time. I don't know the exact reason why, but in my opinion, it was a crime that DDP did not win a world title before 1999. It was a crime that Dallas didn't win a world title before 1999. So with that being said, the final three in this contest was Scott Hall, Diamond Dallas Page, and the Giant. The Giant was taken out by Kevin Nash, leading into what was supposed to be a match between the Giant and Kevin Nash at Starrcade. But the Giant, instead of being the final elimination, is the second to last elimination. And if you hearken back to January 1997, if you hearken back to the beginning of the year, you can hearken back to close your eyes to January 1997, where Kevin Nash and Scott Hall try and recruit their close, longtime friend, Diamond Dallas Page, into the New World Organization. And the fact of the matter is, we think Dallas joins his friends, joins his buddies in the NWO, only to drop Scott Hall with the most dangerous move in wrestling. Shoulders back, chest out, the Diamond Cutter. And the crowd goes crazy. That leads to DDP being on the radar of the NWO and his feud with Randy Savage going all throughout 1997. But close your eyes and picture this. The Giant is taken out by Kevin Nash, who is revealed as Sting. Kevin Nash comes out disguised as Sting and reveals that it's him after taking out the Giant. And then he hands Scott Hall a New World Order tank top to give Dallas Page a second chance. To give Dallas Page an opportunity to right the wrong the choice that he made back in January, where he chose wrong and decided to drop Hall and Nash with a Diamond Cutter. Instead of taking the tank top this time and putting it on and making it seem like he joins the NWO. Scott Hall looks over at Kevin Nash. He looks back at Dallas Page as Dallas Page is getting back to his feet. Remember, your eyes are closed in this moment, imagining watching the pay-per-view at this particular moment in time, and you see Scott Hall walk over to Dallas Page with the NWO shirt in hand. And without hesitation, Dallas Page drops him with the Diamond Cutter from out of nowhere, and he sends Scott Hall over the top rope with both Scott Hall and the NWO t-shirt flying away over the top rope. The bell rings, and the ring announcer chirps, "Your winner of World War III 1997 and earning an opportunity at a future WCW World Heavyweight Championship match, Diamond Dallas Page." This opportunity gives DDP the shot to be world champion number one, and it also gives the world title picture a much needed reset for 1998 because whomever wins between Sting and Hulk Hogan at Starrcade in the match of the century will have a fresh challenge at Super Brawl in February. Because Dallas Page could be the you need to capitalize on Dallas being a star, and I think not only was Ric Flair's feud with Kurt Hennig and him getting revenge eventually for what happened at Fall Brawl, some way that WCW left money on the table, but not capitalizing on the momentum that Dallas Page was building sooner and waiting until 1999 was a mistake. And if it was me, I would have capitalized a lot sooner on Dallas Page's momentum because, in my opinion, the NWO winning Super World War III was a missed opportunity. It was a missed opportunity. And in my opinion, ending World War III with not Dallas Page being dropped by Hulk Hogan, but Dallas Page and Hogan staring down at each other, staring back and forth at each other, Hogan realizing that even if he gets through Sting, he has, waiting for him in 1998, the hottest star in WCW at this particular moment in time, because it is the same guy who not just surpassed 59 other guys. Well, 58 because Kevin Nash never officially got in the match. 58 other guys to win an opportunity for a world title shot. But the previous month defeated Randy Savage to win the feud. In my opinion, the momentum is on the side of Dallas Page. And if you want a new, fresh star on top of the fact that I believe at this moment in time, everybody knew that Bret Hart was going to WCW. So Bret Hart would be a fresh star for WCW in 1998. Chris Benoit could have been a fresh star for WCW in 1998. And Diamond Dallas Page could have been a fresh star for WCW in 1998, but also this adds a little seed of dissension within the ranks of the New World Order and a little bit more tension because the question is, can they stop Dallas Page? With that being said, if you're enjoying me going through the end of 1997, for WCW, I think you all know what comes next. And what comes next is Starrcade. If you want to see more from WCW in 1997, let me know down in the comment section below, or you can always show me with the views and get us above a certain number, let's say 10 views, and the series will continue. I think at this point, though, I have to do Starrcade because I've invested so much time with World War III, Halloween Havoc, and Fall Brawl that it would be doing a disservice to what has become a series that I am thoroughly enjoying if I don't hit Starrcade too. But with that being said, I am done for the day, and I will see you in the next one.